proverb says, tomorrow never comes. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now.
Welcome to the Philosophical Minds Podcast, the podcast about the stuff we wonder about.
And other things.
Just kidding.
Wow, that's funny though.
That'd be funny. But yeah, so today I wanted to talk about some. First, before we get into it, I want to apologize because the last time I was ranting, I went on a ranting spree and Kyle actually literally fell asleep. So talk you to sleep. Kyle, did you have any nice dreams?
I think I came to the conclusion that I have some kind of narcolepsy.
Yes.
Because I fall asleep fairly. I've never been like diagnosed, but I fall asleep extremely quick and it just at ease. It's absolutely insane. I could be so actually, for an example, the other day I was in between appointments and I had like 45 minutes and I literally was taking a call. I put the phone down and I just remember waking up 30 minutes later. I'm like, what? I was out, not driving, obviously, but it's just insane.
He has it more extreme than me for sure.
That's not normal though, right?
I have it. More mild.
Pretty extreme, babe.
I mean, I fell asleep playing video games. When was it? Yesterday or the day before?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like sitting up, like in a chair, like
well, most of the time, his hands will be like this. He'll be like this, and his eyes start to drift, and you see his character just like standing there all of a sudden. I'm like, Sky, are you awake? Oh yeah, I'm just resting my eyes. There's been times where he falls asleep and I wake him up.
Yeah.
And he's like, I wasn't sleeping. I'm like, yes, you were for like 10 minutes. No.
This is when I'm being forced to do something when I'm super tired. And I'm trying to do it anyway to make people happy.
So you're being forced to play video games? Is that what you're saying?
It's a terrible life.
It's a hard life.
Dude, if you could get actual footage of you falling asleep.
Ooh, we have it.
Like a real moment. That's perfect. That would probably go pretty viral immediately.
Oh, like the part where I actually fall asleep?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Because she's got a bunch of videos of her waking me up when I fall asleep. Yep. But no.
They're on YouTube.
Have you tried to like post them on like Instagram and get like views and stuff like that? I think that would be like super popular.
I think I posted them on Instagram, but I'm not the greatest with my Instagram.
Oh, sure.
And then he went viral on TikTok. There was like what? For another thing, it was putting his head through a hole, but you're supposed to cut the hole too small. You say poke your head through the hole, and it's really poke your head, right? Well, the last time he actually fit his head through because his head is like ridiculously small. And I'm like, what the freaking frick?
Does have a small
like 1 million views.
Are you serious? One of your videos had like 1 million views?
And tons of gay guys were like, you're
you can put your head through my hole anytime. Yeah.
There were some pretty inappropriate comments.
Oh my goodness, I can imagine.
Let's talk direct energy weapons, guys. Okay. Or let's talk black ops, not black cops, and not black cocks, Kyle. Okay. Naughty sickos. Let's talk about covert or clandestine operations organized and carried out by government agencies or military units or paramilitary organizations.
Let's do it. Let's dive in.
All right. So
direct weapons.
Not too worried. So.
Okay, go ahead.
So who knows what's really going down these days with some of these black operations, but there's this term. Have you guys heard of like a black bag operation?
It's really called a black bag operation.
It's not like going to the gas station and getting like a 40, not that kind of black bag operation. So it's like all about like covert entry into a building or homes or facilities to basically like gather intel or fingerprint shit or photograph like embed like spy surveillance or bugs, like shit like that. Or like, have you heard of COINTELPRO? Have you guys heard of that?
No.
So COINTELPRO, it was like basically a bunch of illegal projects carried out by the FBI to basically infiltrate and surveil like a shit ton of political organizations. And this gets into like psychological warfare tactics, smear campaigning, like forging documents to paint like a false narrative in the media and all kinds of crazy shit. Like, for example,
forging docs.
For forging documents.
They actually forged stuff.
Wow.
Like
yeah. So I believe it was in the 70s. They infiltrated some anti-communist organization and basically morphed it into something called the Secret Army Organization. And like some of its members had like CIA connections and all that. And this organization, basically they're going around bombing cars and burglarizing the homes of anti-war protesters. And it was like basically a sanctioned terror and sabotage organization architected and funded by the FBI. And they were literally like going after anti-war leaders and activists and instigating shit through violence. And so this is the kind of shit that really makes me wonder, like, what's going on now? I mean, if it doesn't go to show that there's groups like throughout history and of course currently who are like deeply invested and interested in perpetuating division and getting everyone to argue with each other, I don't know what does. I mean, it's literally like agents of chaos,
Mm-hmm.
But and in the name of what? National security? Like, I'm not buying it.
So they were doing this to get people to go to war, or just to get rid of people who were anti-war?
I think it was a combination of both, because they were getting the anti-war protesters. They were pretty much infiltrating their communities and instigating violence within those communities and or around them, probably to discredit them or maybe show some kind of force that they're against their purpose. So they want to perpetuate the war machine. Like, somebody with deep pockets is just funding this stuff. And there is like a black budget. Like, the black budget's a real thing. It's like estimated to be over $50 billion a year or something like that, like for quote unquote military research purposes. And this budget's handled by the Department of Defense. It was created by the U.S. National Security Act in 1947, which created the CIA and the National Security Council. So like the National Security Council, I think these are the people behind the scenes, that are like in the president's ear pushing war and like trying to push foreign policies and instigate war and all that stuff. So I don't know if it was organized through the FBI, and who knows what's going on really behind the scenes. But I will say this: if you're a fan of architecture, which I'm a fan of architecture, look up the headquarters of the USNSC, the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. It's fucking beautiful. I think it's Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. So shout out to the architect of that, Alfred Built Mullet. Excellent job. It's a beautiful French imperial style. It's super dope and sexy. But anyway, they have super badass library in there as well. So I don't know if they don't ever end up coming for me, maybe I could visit that someday. But
so Alfred B. Mullet was a British American architect who served from 1866 to 1874 as supervising architect, head of the agency of the United States Treasury Department that designed federal government buildings. Interesting.
Yeah, he's dope.
Wow.
But yeah, and I don't know.
So this black budget, let's go back to this black budget real quick. So maybe this is a very noob question, but where's that money coming from? Is it coming?
Well, I think it comes from our tax dollars.
So it's from us paying taxes. They draw it from that.
I think
this 15 million, 15 billion.
I think
what'd you find?
I think it's 50. I think what I read was 50 million or 50. Okay. I don't know if it was billion. I almost want to say it was 50 billion a year. That was
a year.
Money that gets funded into black budget, like the black budget.
That was set aside. Okay.
You could probably type in black budget and then get some info on that. But I don't. Is it the
vault.fbi.gov?
What is it?
There's a disclaimer that pops up. it's a government website because I typed in anti-war movement FBI and bombings. And it has a disclaimer. It says the FBI's FOIA library contains many files of public interest and historical value in compliance with the National Archives and Records Administration, NARA, requirements. Some of these records are no longer in the physical possession of the FBI. That's weird.
Interesting.
Eliminating the FBI's capability to re-review and or reprocess this material. Please note that the information found in these files may no longer reflect current beliefs. It's still weird because you're supposed to like store information, and there's not like a mandatory get rid of the files. It's just privacy rights if it like involves someone else. So it's really weird that they're.
So do you think that would be something like maybe they would get put in the hands of another intelligence agency or something because it would have possibly involved a criminal action on their part?
Maybe it's strange because it doesn't say that the files may have been purged according to privacy laws, which is like I draft these things.
That is interesting.
It's saying that they don't physically possess the material. That means okay, so it's out there, but someone else physically has it, or what happened? Strange. But.
So I was trying to find out who approves like targeted killings, like the government approved assassinations, basically, and it was kind of hard. I don't know if it goes through the vice president or what.
That's a great question.
These were like super frequent during like the Bush administration, during the war on terror. And
well, if it's an American citizen, then they would have to be declared like terrorists for it to happen.
But I'm talking about like, say, for Iraq or something, like the war on terrorism, if they wanted to target and basically assassinate somebody,
whoever
like
the commanding officer, like whoever is in charge on the ground overseas, because they have the delegated authority to make decisions.
So I think I read, I think it was Bush that would review and approve the killing of selected targets without judicial process. I don't know if that was.
They say that, but it's so hard when you hear something to actually like validate what happened, because a lot of times I hear things like that, and then I look at like the background and the research, and it's a lot of false activity.
Hold up. Sure.
Let me ask you a question, actually. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Who are you working for?
I'm working for the government.
Okay. And then, of course, under the Obama administration, targeted killings expanded, mostly via combat drones. So this would have to do with covert action or clandestine activities. Right? Hold on, let me pull something up. So it says the introduction here, unlike covert action, clandestine activities do not require prior notice to Congress via a presidential finding, but may still require notification of Congress. This definition differentiates clandestine from covert, using clandestine to signify the tactical concealment of the activity. By comparison, covert operations are, quote, planned and executed as to conceal the identity or permit plausible denial by the sponsor. Actually, I'm going to send you this document, see if you can make sense of this verbal jujitsu that they're trying to pull on me right now.
Can I put it in the...
I think I can put it in the chat. Hold on.
Yeah.
Does that go to you and Kyle or just you?
It says to me privately.
Okay, I'm going to send it to Kyle too, just in case he wants to look
in the chat. Okay, let's see.
So yeah, check that out and you can talk more details about that. You know what else I want to talk about? Well, actually, first, let's lay some deeper groundwork. Let's talk about these previous behavioral modification black projects or black programs, like these shady ass motherfucking MK Ultra dealios. That's where the real weirdness is at, right? Ashley over here always defending the CIA.
I've heard of MK Ultra through you, but I haven't dived into it.
Look, I'm sure some of your CIA friends are super great, Ashley, but you know, we can't avoid the fact of the matter that there's basically some sketchy ass individuals engaged in covert biowarfare studies in collaboration with the goddamn Project Paperclip Nazi scientists, right? At least in the past, but
I don't know.
Okay,
They say
so for example,
reduction is based on the theory of fear, and that raises uncertainty and fear.
So MK Ultra, Project Artichoke, and who knows whatever else. Let's get into it. Okay, so we have this Sidney Gottlieb character, former agent of our beloved Central Intelligence Agency, who was like a poison specialist, because every intelligence agency, of course, has to have a dark arts sorcerer on hand at all times.
Absolutely.
So his name was Sidney Gottlieb.
Okay.
SIDNEY GOTTLIEB. He was like creating spy gadgets for spies to use to assassinate via poison. He was like the motherfucker, or at least one of the major dudes that we know of that was carrying out like the mind control shit. He was an American chemist, scientist, spy master, assassin, and official asshole. Like he was like basically the head of the whole MK Ultra thing, I guess. Well, like the supervisor of it. But he administered the drugs himself, and above him directing it was CIA director Alan Dulles. See, this corruption goes high level, Ashley. It's often people in very important roles in these government institutions running these sideshows. But yeah, so anyway, it's pretty crazy. But so remember
the corruption part though, because you're talking about I'm reading to catch up. So
okay, so
poisons to kill Fidel Castro. Oh,
so remember we were talking about like direct energy weapons and military industrial contracts and yada yada. Mm-hmm. Lockheed Martin, of course. Lockheed Martin's always a big player in this stuff, but mm-hmm. Gottlieb was basically like the military liaison to Lockheed as well. Apparently, it's always like all this stuff like is always tied together. But anyway. I think his role with all that had something to do with the U-2 bomber under something called Project Aquatone also, but that's a different story. So according to CIA documents on this, not only was there MK Ultra, but there's also MK Naomi, MK Delta, Project Chatter. And have you guys, have you guys heard of Operation Midnight Climax?
We were talking about this the other day.
We were talking about
briefly. Okay. Yeah.
So let's talk about it. So, okay. This is where they kind of win me back over, right? Because I'm sitting here harping on all this, but you got to hand it to them because it's kind of hard to be mad. It's just the fact that there's an actual CIA operation. The title of it was Operation Midnight Climax. I mean, I love it. Operation Midnight Climax, baby.
Such an appealing title. Yeah.
So keep in mind, this was done under the direction of the Federal Narcotics Bureau, which strangely was an agency of the U.S. Department of Treasury. Federal Narcotics Bureau, agency of the Department of Treasury. What? So that's odd to me. But is that weird to you, Ashley?
No, it's the structure because just like FinCEN, it's part of the U.S. Department of Treasury. So, and that's the Financial Crime Enforcement Network. Okay. So they have these kind of intertwined, and the departments have to like consult with one another because they all have, kind of shared jurisdiction. Like the SEC, you've seen how they'll try to regulate what, money transmitters do. And then FinCEN will say, no, this is what the regulation is. And they kind of try to keep it together.
So there is some regulation. Like okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was out of Boston, Massachusetts. It's all roads lead to Boston, Massachusetts. You guys will see this. But anyway, it was a sub-project of MK Ultra, the Operation Midnight Climax. And anyways, where was it going with that? So like hundreds of dudes were in this operation because, I mean, like, think about it. You're in the CIA. Why wouldn't you jump all over that opportunity? Operation Midnight Climax. I mean, come on, sign me the fuck up. But so Gottlieb hired this George Hunter White dude. George Hunter White started as a Border Patrol agent. He applied for the FBI, but ultimately ended up getting a position with the FBN, the Federal Bureaucracy narcotics. An interesting note, there was a memorandum in his FBI file that showed he also attended a British sabotage school near Toronto, Canada. Like, this is the kind of people we're talking about. Like, oh, I'm just, going to sabotage school, no big deal. But so he's busting people for drugs and shit for the Federal Narcotics Bureau. And this was like in the 40s. So this was the time of the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which was the predecessor to the CIA. So George Hunter White left the FNB for the OSS. And in the OSS, he was a spy trainer. And he was working under Gottlieb, setting up apartments that were equipped with two-way mirrors where they hired hookers to bring their clients in and dose them with LSD and then finish banging them or blowing them or whatever sexual acts. But Hunter White, he was like the creep behind the mirror, observing the behavior of the clients and like, I don't know, taking notes or whatever. And then meanwhile, he was like an alcoholic and just like getting wasted every night while he was watching these fucking live psychedelic porn shows behind the mirror. And I guess he was like a big drug user himself, although I'm not sure exactly what kind of drugs he was into. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Aspects of it kind of reminds me of like the Epstein deal minus the underage kids and all that. But I don't know. I was going deep into Epstein at one point. Not as a victim. I wasn't going deep into Epstein like that, but I was going. So yeah. Anyway, I was penetrating Epstein. So when I was looking into Epstein, I found out that he had accidentally, or not accidentally, he told one of the chicks that he was a behavioral scientist. It was like in one of the police reports or whatever. I don't know if you guys know much about the Epstein network. I don't know like a whole lot, but I know a little bit. So Epstein basically is like lower level management, and then above him there's Ghislaine Maxwell, and her name is so fitting, right?
Right.
Welcome to the Jizz Lane. Just kidding. Anyway, so Ghislaine was like procuring girls, I guess it's called like a honeypot espionage thing or something along those lines. And I believe that's the terminology. So Ghislaine's the daughter of this dude, Robert Maxwell. And Robert Maxwell was like some kind of software, developed some kind of software systems and sold them to various intelligence agencies. And he was like a British spy / media dude, and possibly like even a double or triple agent for MI6 and the KGB. And he ultimately, I think his loyalty was like to the British, but he had like a giant publishing empire, and he was like a member of Parliament in Buckingham. He had like a crazy military background. But anyway, so he developed this software called Promise Software, and it's a really promising name too. Sounds nice. Promise Software. So it sounds really integral and trustworthy. Yeah, we definitely won't be tapping into your government databases or anything like that. Just Promise Software. So yeah, I think it was used basically for something like that. But I'm getting off topic.
I'm reading about Operation Midnight Climax right now as you're talking about. Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
What did you guys find? Anything good?
That they would take non-consenting adults and give them LSD and other drugs.
Yeah.
And video record. There's so many laws broken. Remember when we were talking about ethics during the communist scare and like a lot of the stuff that was going on at that time? There were so many illegal and unethical experiments that happened. So this is the first time I've heard the name MK Ultra and all that stuff, but I didn't realize this is what happened. And I'm pulling up a New York Times article from November 20th, 1981. Not that the news is always reliable, but back then it was a little bit better, I think.
So while you look that up, there's a theory that all these recent fires may have potentially started systematically via some kind of direct energy weapon or drone technology, beaming down microwaves or whatever to basically catch it on fire. That's the alleged, or it had something to do like possibly with that, but maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, do you guys think that's a possibility or no?
I'm still looking for motive. So if there's
Okay.
money or power somewhere in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Motive for sure.
There was something I read a while back about them, quote unquote, they wanting to build a railway or something like that from like through or across North America that was going to go through a particular part of the United States into Canada. So a lot of like conspiracy theorists think that they are or were starting these fires intentionally to burn away shit in order to build in future construction. You don't think? No. Okay.
You know why I shoot that one down? Eminent Domain. Look up I think it's called The Little Pink House. They made a movie about it where government, if they want to, for aesthetics, for the health and welfare, they use that clause in the Constitution, they can exercise eminent domain. They have to pay you reasonable cost, which is like nothing. They never ever pay what people should get, but they can force people out of their homes or out of their houses. Remember, we were talking about the city of Gilbert and how the backyards, they wanted to do construction. So instead of doing the construction and then patching it up, they're actually forcing the homeowners to sell like half of their land in Gilbert. So they wouldn't need to go that far to use energy weapons. And it would be a lot cheaper to exercise eminent domain because that's pretty quick.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're powerless, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I hate to say that. I mean,
terrifying.
But really, if the government decides, whether it's the city, the state, that they need property for some sort of bigger function,
sure.
The Little Pink House, that movie will, freak you out a little bit because it's the story of how this town that was in a poor area had the government come in and say, okay, we're going to force you guys to sell your homes. And so they try to fight, they litigate in court, and they're like, the government is buying our homes to sell it to a private corporate company. Okay. So a private corporation that was going to come in, put shopping malls and all this stuff. So it's not even the government who is needing the land. They're like basically forcing the citizens to sell their land and their houses and everything. And then the government was going to get the contract to a private party. So that's total violation.
Wow.
Right? They litigated the lawsuit. It was like a 10-year deal. They lost the lawsuit. The main, character in the movie that they made that's like based on the story. She talks about how they started doing construction. The company that was supposed to come in and fix everything up went under. So all these people lost their homes. And they started the project, and now it's just vacant lots because they bulldozed everything.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Holy shit.
That's insane.
Eminent domain.
Wow. Quite a downer. Well, on that note, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Jeez, that's crazy.
Usually, in all fairness, government is more responsible. But yes, if there was someone who was really bad that got into, politics at the city level, state level, they could do some pretty messed up stuff.
Wow. What are you thinking, Skylar?
I'm just thinking about Operation Midnight Climax. I was thinking, how much would somebody have to pay Ashley to be one of the hookers? That
no amount of money.
Oh my god.
Nothing.
No amount of money, but $100 million. Just kidding.
Babe,
there we go. At least he's 100 million. Sky would sell his body for sex for $1 million.
This is. Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean,
like,
now. But Ashley, this is in the name of science for your country. This is behavioral research.
No.
No?
I don't think you need that for behavioral research. I think sex has been around long enough that we figured it out pretty much.
Right. Yeah. No research needing to be done.
Freaky. So Operation Paperclip, have you guys looked into much of that?
Paperclip?
Just how they transferred the... So have you guys heard of Werner von Braun?
Yeah.
Ashley, remember that thing called the Nuremberg trials?
Yes.
Could you give the listeners a little touch on a little bit about what the Nuremberg trials were about?
I have to refresh my memory because we learned about this, I feel like, in law school. Was that where they did all those experiments in Germany?
That's pretty much where they executed like Nazis and shit, wasn't it?
Quite a lot. Between 1945 and 1949. This I learned about in undergrad when I was in England. It's been over 13 years. So bringing Nazi war criminals to justice, series of 13 trials.
That's basically the gist of it.
Nazi party officials.
So he led NASA, right? Werner von Braun, and then
Werner von Braun,
Nazi?
Yeah. So this gentleman, Werner von Braun, he was set to be executed during these trials because he was a high-level war criminal, right?
Mm-hmm.
He went on to become the director and chief architect of NASA, developing the Saturn V. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. This was Werner von Braun, a Nazi war criminal that got transferred over during Operation Paperclip. So let's see, between like 1945 and 1959 was when he came over. So the earliest administrator of NASA at this time, I think it was Thomas Keith Glennon from 58 to 61. An interesting side note, Tom Glennon, he was also the staff of an aircraft corporation called Vega. Vega was a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. So you're going to keep hearing, once we talk about all these conspiracy theories, you'll hear like Lockheed Martin, you'll hear like Boston, Massachusetts, like they'll be repeating things like that. But anyway,
interesting.
Operation Paperclip, covert program that it went down between like the late 40s, where the U.S. government, or actually specifically the OSS, as well as the Counterintelligence Corps, the Cold War Intel Agency of the Army, formed an organization formed under the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency that recruited and adopted over 1,000 Nazi scientists, engineers, rocket scientists, and shit like that. Von Braun and his brother Magnus Mack Freiherr von Braun and his brother Werner von Braun, aerospace engineer, rocket scientist, Nazi space pioneer, who was the NASA engineering program manager in the early days. He launched the first space satellite, Explorer 1, and a bunch of other shit.
Apollo 11. That's interesting.
Super interesting.
Wow. So Werner von Braun is, I mean, Operation Paperclip is Werner von Braun, right? He was.
Well, Operation Paperclip was where they basically the U.S. government brought over a bunch of the Nazi scientists, and like engineers and rocket scientists and all that during the 40s. So it was like a part of a organization that was formed under something called the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency. So yeah, they recruited a bunch of them. And then like NASA took off basically because the dude was such a genius rocket scientist, but he was also a Nazi that was supposed to be executed during the Nuremberg trials. But yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm not seeing that they brought criminals over. I'm seeing that they brought German scientists, engineers, and technicians. There's no accusation that they were.
And his V2 rocket team. What's that?
Werner von Braun was a Nazi war criminal.
But I'm not seeing that. Let me
keep
try.
looking.
Hold on.
Okay, so and then it says some were former leaders of the Nazi Party, U.S. Army's counterintelligence corps. It's crazy.
So Werner von Braun. Is it Werner? Oh, Werner Braun.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Werner.
Oh, I guess it is Werner, huh?
Werner Magnus Maximilian Freiherr von Braun.
That's his brother, I think.
Okay.
So there's two of them. There was like him and his brother.
Werner von Braun. Yeah.
Say Werner. Why? That's really odd. Oh, this says Werner von Braun. Okay. I think that's just like his middle names. Okay, he worked in Nazi Germany's rocket development program, helped design and
Originally.
co-develop the V-2 rocket during World War
Yes.
II.
Wow.
Following the war, he was secretly moved to the U.S. along with 16 other German scientists, engineers, technicians. Part of Operation Paperclip, he worked for the United States Army on an intermediate range ballistic missile program and developed the rockets that launched the U.S. first space satellite Explorer 1. Served as director.
Jeez.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about social engineering, compliance, not science, and like this experimental vaccine reward systems talk. So like, what do you think when you can go to Krispy Kreme Donuts and get a free donut if you get the vaccine? What message do you think this sends? What do you think, Ashley? Do you think this is good, or do you think this is?
It's really tough with the vaccine because for me, the jury is still out on if the vaccine's good, bad, if there's motives hidden behind them wanting us to get it, or if it's just literally they came up with a vaccine and people are just conspiracy theorying it to death. So I don't know, but they've done that pretty much throughout history with like tons of stuff. It is odd, however, that for the first time that I've ever seen in US history, they are actually granting more travel rights to people who've been vaccinated, which to me doesn't make much sense because they've already said that the vaccines don't protect people from spreading the virus. So they can't get the virus and get sick from it, but they can still pass it on, like if they've touched it or if there's particles or whatever. So basically, it's like the airlines are rewarding people who've made a self-choice to do something, which is really odd at the expense of people who choose not to. That's the part I'm concerned with.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do you see it as a form of social engineering?
Well, define what you think social engineering is.
The use of centralized planning in attempts to manage social change and regulate the future development and behavior of a society. Okay.
So one, to have a concept like that actually be implemented successfully, you have to have a really, really capable government. And I think our government does a lot of complex things, but I've worked at the state level, federal level, and sometimes one department doesn't know what the other is doing. So do I think there's some secret society magically coordinating all of this stuff and just implementing it beautifully? I find that really hard to believe.
It's too complicated.
Yeah. So, and it would be really hard for like one group to get that much control because you're dealing with a private company, which is Krispy Kreme. So they'd have to be in on the conspiracy theory. Yeah. I think there's a lot more with the hospitals getting paid money and maybe abusing that perk versus like the whole Krispy Kreme conspiracy thing. I don't know. My opinion.
Kyle, what if they gave you 2 donuts? Then would you do it?
I'm all in for sure, 100%. So what is the offer? It's a donut a day for a year?
I think I don't know. Is that what it is?
That's
no, I think it's only like there's a time limit on it. So 30 days after you get it, or maybe 3 months. I don't know. I can't remember. I'd have to look.
It sounds extremely unhealthy.
But this is what's a little odd too. So what about the people who have COVID and don't need to get the vaccine because they have an immunity? Why not give them free donuts? I mean, they went through COVID.
Yeah.
You're not going to make them get vaccinated, are you? I don't know.
That's interesting.
I'm joking around.
Do you think anybody's running out right now to get vaccinated just to get free donuts?
I can imagine
some idiots. Yeah. Just a wave of fools, just, wanting free donuts so they're going to go get vaccinated.
Krispy Kreme is addictive. I don't know. True story. My aunt, we were on our way to California. We were like 2.5 hours into the I-10. So yeah, for people who don't live in Arizona, you like have certain main highways. I-10 goes kind of across different places. But anyways,
Sure.
you drive about 3 hours like into the middle of the desert. You used to have to. We were literally like 2.5 hours in, and she's like, I really want Krispy Kreme. We turned around and drove all the way back so she could get a box of Krispy Kreme donuts.
Kidding.
And this is not an overweight aunt. She just was like craving it. So I don't know.
So you were 2.5 hours in, so you backtracked.
Yes.
Are you
I was
kidding
16 years
me?
old. I'll never forget that.
I would have been
Yeah,
like,
you know.
fuck you. I love you, but you're going to have to just wait.
You know
You-
what though? Secretly, I wanted the Krispy Kreme donuts too. So I was like, okay.
She was possessed by the Krispy Kreme demon.
It's the sugar.
I
Oh, it does it. It
Oh,
does
they're
it.
Kyle,
so
do you
good.
have any?
More.
Do you have
They
anything
are
like
pretty
that
good.
where
They're
you
pretty good.
just where it just takes you over, like any particular vice?
No, it seems to be different all the time, but I'm not eating as well as I should or balanced. So I'll crave like carbs, simple sugars one day, and the next day I'll crave like dairy, which I don't really eat a lot of dairy. So it's really just bizarre. It's just
Ashley's
like very
got the
inconsistent.
dairy demon inside.
Oh,
of her.
really?
Oh, if milk was gone, I don't think I would want to live.
That's funny.
I don't know
Well,
what I would do.
What's your favorite type of milk?
Just 2% milk. That's it.
She gets the
But
Reggie's.
Shamrock, I have certain brands that I like.
Mm-hmm.
So
Skylar, you don't drink milk, right? Or do you?
I've been drinking it lately. I'll do like if I have a kind
Yeah.
that I choose.
No, it's okay
that
if you do.
that I like more. It's like the A2,
Me too.
and then it's organic, like the best quality.
Yeah.
I'll drink what Ashley has sometimes because it's there.
milk does the body good.
But I don't
Yeah.
feel as good about it because they're
Brainwashing.
cows that are grown up in factory farms and they're
You
probably
don't care
producing
about the
stress
cows, do
chemicals.
you?
We don't really care about that. We're just pandering to our vegan audience. Yeah, dude, I love milk. Whole milk, I think, is the best. There's a lot more fat in it, but it seems to just set a little bit better. And
That's
we do a lot
yeah,
of like oat milk stuff too, but I think regular whole milk is pretty good.
it's
I
wholesome.
love milk.
Yeah. heck
And we
yeah.
have goats that we do milk when they're in milk, and I love that milk too. So I would totally take that.
Oh,
any
yeah.
day. I have a good life. I've got lots of
The,
space.
the goat milk is actually what got me going on milk
Yeah.
because I wasn't
Do
doing
you-
milk for like years before, and then I had the goat milk, and then I was like, milk.
Do you actually
But-
drink it from the source?
From
the goat's
my mouth
teats?
right up to the
God,
nipple,
Okay.
and I just go
It
to
has
town.
to be
teats.
refrigerated. And like
Okay.
you have to put it through a filter thing and stuff like
Oh,
that.
is it pretty gamey or?
No,
it's-
so
ours
these
is delicious.
these goats, we paid a lot of money because they're ADGA. It's the American Dairy Association. They actually
Oh,
compete
wow.
for having milk that tastes like cow's milk. It's very sweet. It's not like that. When you think of goat's milk, you think of that
Sure.
like kind of sour, I don't know, pungent, like cheesy.
Sure.
But they're Nigerian dwarfs, and their milk is so good. It's like cow's milk. But
These
it's,
are high end goats, right?
they are.
Okay.
High octane.
That's
These are high
pretty
octane.
awesome. See, I'm so ignorant. I just thought a goat was a goat, but that's just
No, they're
seeing
like
it,
bred
that's,
for their
that's
milk.
insane.
It's a whole other world of competition.
That's
Some
pretty
some would
fascinating.
say that they are the secret to my reproductive success.
Oh, you
The
did
goat
mention
milk. We did
it
drink a lot of Moana's milk before. I
made
got
you more viral.
Possibly.
Vitality. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So
So let's get more into that. So what do you mean you're a little more potent? Can you get more into detail or is that too personal?
Okay, so no, I don't care.
Just for
Let's just see.
our listeners that don't know.
Pre-milk, no baby production. Post-milk, baby production.
That's right.
Let's just put it that way.
3
It's
years
pretty-
of no baby production.
It's
That's
like
funny.
pretty much the only thing I changed in my diet that's
It
significant.
really is. It's
That's
so weird.
crazy.
Yeah.
3 years, infertility, failed IVF,
Oh no.
$24,000 down the drain.
It's kind of like anti-milk too.
That's a lot of money.
And then guy drinks milk and bam, knocks me up.
Boom.
How long were you drinking milk before you started producing?
A couple months or
for like-
something? Or
Months, babe.
how
That's
much?
crazy.
About 6 months.
Okay.
Because you started with Moana and we got her year before last. And we milked her up until I got pregnant. Remember?
Yeah.
Because she was in milk when we got her.
So
I should say you
delicious.
milked her, because that was I milked her.
You can milk anything with nipples.
Yeah. Yeah, Greg Fokker. Yeah. That's so funny. I got nipples,
Okay.
Greg. Can you milk me? Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
I want to touch
That's
on
incredible.
satellite surveillance technologies real quick. Are you guys familiar with satellite surveillance technologies?
Vaguely.
Satellite surveillance?
So what's been going on with satellite surveillance? Like, I want to get into like signals intelligence, and there's something called Echelon. So I believe Echelon is the code name that the NSA has given to this network. So Echelon's like the code name for a satellite surveillance program that's shared between what's called the Five Eyes network. So this is the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, I think. So it's a global interception system of private and commercial communications to basically it's like this Five Eyes network of agencies, and each of these, they have like their own satellite intercepting station, like the crazy one with those like golf ball looking things, or like I think they're called like radomes or radar domes or whatever. So like in Australia, they've got like Pine Gap. In the UK, they've got something called Memwith Hill, and then like there's one in Sunnyvale, California or something in the US. So they all connect or whatever, and they basically I think the way it works is they just like siphon signals and like communications, and they all share it, like it's like a shared network.
Okay.
But yeah, so as usual, Lockheed Martin had a hand in the development of the network. They called, I think their code name for it was like P415. So the program, the system runs off of is called Silkworth or Sire or something like that. I don't know if that's what Lockheed helped develop, but so yeah, this is a shared network between the 5 countries, basically with like a software and infrastructure in place to communicate and capture or intercept communications and distribute them to the network.
Communications eavesdropping, is that something as well?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, sorry to cut you off.
Like they share these communications through like a satellite network, so like telecommunication, like cell phones, landlines, computers, data, like all that shit. And we're like sitting here worried about like Elon Musk Starlink. It's like grid network, but who knows what the hell.
Do you know what they used the info for though?
Well, I mean, if you listen to like Edward Snowden, I mean, he was the one that really made a lot of this known, because he exploited the fact that they were like eavesdropping on just regular citizens.
Massive
and stuff like
whistleblower.
that.
Sure.
Yeah. So
it's the National Security Agency.
Yeah, the NSA.
They fed information to Boeing, which is a U.S. company, and McDonnell Douglas, enabling the companies to beat out European Airbus industry for a $6 billion contract. Other one is they gave information to Raytheon and helped it win a $1.3 billion contract to provide radar to Brazil, edging out the French company. So it's a U.S. agency that's National Security Agency, which is basically insider trading against other countries. Yeah.
Wow.
That's interesting.
I mean, the part that's interesting is that if they are like gathering information, it's about money. Remember, the 2 biggest motives: money, power.
Definitely. Oh, so I wanted to get back because I never got into the voice of God technology, or like what it's called, like the voice of God weapon. Okay, so there's a company. So there's a couple different versions. Holosonic Research Labs, they've developed a version, and then American Technology Corporation has a version. So DARPA, they're working on like a version as well. So the Department of Defense uses this technology in combination with what's called an active denial system that makes your skin feel like it's on fire. And their system, it was developed and organized, or it was developed by an organization located at Quantico, Virginia, and run by the Marine Corps. It's called the Intermediate Force Capabilities Office. So as of 2020, that's no longer, it's the commandant of the Marine Corps, I guess. And so somehow this ensures that the Department of Defense is able to mainstream the use of the relevant tools known as intermediate force capabilities, I guess. You know, these are non-lethals or whatever. So they're going to maximize the impact of like armed conflict. So we, you know, let's just push this through, you know, nothing to see here. Like, think of the shit that they can develop and use under the guise of non-lethals. Like, it sounds great, like, you know, non-lethal, but like, where does that go?
Sure.
I don't know. I just picture like these 4-star generals hanging out in like some military bunker in Virginia somewhere. It's like, you know, Paul, the people are starting to catch on to this regime change war game, and they're talking about Syria and Yemen, and you know, they figured out that Iraq was a giant scam. Just maybe we should minimize the death rate for a little bit until we can gain some traction back. I don't know what to do. And then you got Dave across the table, and he's like, you know, this is actually good, Paul. You're looking at this all wrong. And he like picks up like a cigar, takes a couple puffs. He's like, you see panic and I see profits, baby. Let's implement some non-lethal options. You know, we can utilize this as an opportunity to not only get some weapons contracts going, but open up some business relations as well. And, you know, just get Homeland Security in on it. Maybe the Coast Guard. Everybody's happy. More programs, more cash, and less death. Utilizing non-lethals, right? Sure. It's a win-win. Yeah. The people are happy, get more funding, you know.
Those are great selling points for, absolutely, for sure.
Get more R&D money and get some hookers, do some blow, you know. Go hang with your bros over at like some asymmetric warfare group at Fort Meade. Blow some shit up, get fucked up, strategize for next month. Why not? And then you got like Jim in the background. He's like a hillbilly. He's like, oh shit, yes, I've been bored as fuck, and all these anti-war pussies are starting to piss me off. And then he like pours a couple of shots of Jack Daniels and then just downs them. He snorts a line of coke.
Our government.
He snorts a line of coke, and he's like, I've been really wanting to try out some of them microwave weapons for a while now. Let's test some of this shit on the civilians. Let's test some of the shit on the civilians in the Middle East. What do you say, bros? And then Dave responds, he's like, yes. Dave's like, we can simultaneously run a propaganda campaign to counter any uproar. What do you think about that, Ashley? So information by the State Department to counter
forever. You know what torture is, right? Non-lethal.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, though. Like,
right.
Yeah.
It's just
like,
it's basically the same old horse, but it's more advanced technology. You know, it's like another way to pepper spray someone. Basically, you're putting this weapon out that emits this whatever it is that causes their skin to feel like it's on fire. I don't know. Pepper spray. I've heard it's pretty bad. So I think they all fall into that same category. But do I think the government is that relaxed in there? No, I've worked for the government and it is the most strict. I mean, very orderly. It's not, hey, yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking about like a totally different. You're not talking about like the military industrial complex. Like, there's been a ton of reports of like troops utilizing modified versions of this technology.
Go to a military interview or talk to a recruiter.
Yeah, well, like
there, it's like a different. Ask Brittany because she's been corrections officer for how many years?
So research long range acoustic devices, or LRADs. So there's like reports of them using them. I think they have something
Oh,
to
I
do
heard
with
about
like
that.
the modified active denial aspect. So they're
Is
like
that the one they
subject.
call the voice of God?
I think so. It's something to do with that. Like, so they I don't know, that it like pulses at like
Because
90.
it's so intense. Go ahead.
Yeah, like 95 gigahertz of electromagnetic energy, I guess, is what they pulse at. And then I'll send you a link to it because I have it right here.
They say it's so unbearable that you have to leave the area. So it's probably something like if you heard someone scratch their nails on a chalkboard, right?
Are you defending direct energy weapon use right now?
No.
Okay.
So this is like a manipulation, like sound wave or something. Is that what we're talking about?
The thing is, once they implement these technologies, like here, okay, so like there's been a lot of reports of them using them, and so they're non-lethal weapons applications, and I think that's how they kind of like fly under the radar. So they can be used like for like things like crowd control. So they emit like beams at 2.5 kilohertz. So these are like millimeter wavelength technologies, and they've been deployed in like 9 different countries. So I can give you examples like all day if you want me to give you examples. Like even in Phoenix, Arizona, the city council, they purchased 2 of these LRADs. I think it was the LRAD 500X systems in 2018. The Phoenix City Council purchased them to provide the ability for us to give like a clear message to groups of people whenever they find it necessary to communicate with them. I guess it's like what they're quoted as saying. But so they were used here. I'll just show you. 2019 Puerto Rican festival. Police utilized a long-range acoustic device to declare an unlawful assembly. Oh wait, no, this was in Phoenix. During the 2009 Puerto Rican festival, police utilized a long-range acoustic device to declare an unlawful assembly in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. Apparently, as an example. I think they were used during the George Floyd protests in some areas. They were used in the 2004 Republican National Convention in New York City, Pittsburgh during protests at the G20 summit in 2009. Like I can just read these for days because they just go on and on. But anyway, so a little bit of info on some of the manufacturers of the technology. So that company, Holosonic, I think it is funded by Dr. F. Joseph Pompey. He's a graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Okay, remember all roads lead to Massachusetts. And then, so the American Technology Corporation is funded in Utah by Elwood Woody Norris in 1980. He became what's called Genesis Incorporation, which is a Delaware corporation as of 1992, and they sell government and military markets. That's who they sell to. So some of the details on these LRADs. So there's an LRAD 2000X. That's like one of the products. Like you can look it up online, and they have the ability to issue authoritative voice commands and powerful deterrent tones to safely alter behavior and enhance response capabilities. LRAD 2000X installations are proliferating as Homeland Security and public safety agencies are recognizing it as a more effective, less costly alternative to secure sovereign borders and protect critical infrastructure. Do you want me to send you the link on that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to send you the link. Okay, so there's the link on that particular product. So Woody Norris, he's the founder of Genesis, and he says the principle behind hypersonic technology is to focus sound waves in the way a laser focuses light. That's his quote. And then he also said, my hypersonic device was the first to successfully focus high quality sound by embedding audible sound on top of ultrasound and having the audible sound demodulate in the air itself without needing a receiver. In essence, the room is the speaker box.
Yeah, so it's extremely loud and uncomfortable.
Yeah, so he has all kinds of like...
Go ahead.
I was gonna say he just has all kinds of like crazy patents and like government patents and stuff for all this stuff. Like, the patent number on that one, it's 6850623 for anybody who wants to check that out. But yeah, and then there's this guy named James P. O'Laughlin, and he's got like a bunch of crazy patents too. He's got one called the method and device for implementing the radio frequency hearing effect. So, and then he's got like a bunch of stuff on microwave antennas, phase locking systems, Air Force applications, stuff on energy trapping and adaptive cloaking. And I want to eventually get into cloaking technologies, but maybe on another podcast. But the crux of it is, so this microwave auditory effect, it's like, or the AKA the microwave hearing effect or the fray effect. It's like the communications are generated directly inside the human head without the need of any like receiving electronic device. Like speech is induced by pulsed or modulated radio frequencies into your head.
Well, so I'm reading something a little bit different about the same thing, but they're talking about how they believe they used it at the protest in Washington, and there's people who like wrote about what it sounded like or how painful. So this woman describes it as one of those painful sounds because it's so intense and so loud. So not that they're like putting something in an individual's ear, but they're literally using vibrations to, if you were to take the loudest speaker and, you know, where it's uncomfortably loud and magnify it like times 100, that's what they're saying. So it's like painful so much to the point where you have to leave the area because it's unbearable. But they call it the voice of God because of the power of the projection of the sound.
Oh, that's what they were calling it in that particular scenario? Because I thought that was like a modified or different version of it that they used in different circumstances that they were calling the voice of God.
It says LRAD is like a powerful megaphone. Its use seems relatively familiar. ADS is different, a novel and exotic capability for which there is no ready analog. People should think of it like a taser, which a police department routinely use. For those fortunate enough to not have met up with one close, a quick explanation is a taser fires electrodes into the victim and then hits them with a high voltage that's enough to short circuit the nervous system.
Whoa.
Victims are incapacitated. Tasers have gained acceptance because they provide an intermediate blah, blah, blah. ADS is similar. It uses technology to incapacitate people without hurting them. It's an intermediate force option. An important difference, however, is that tasers are used every day and hence familiar, while ADS is strange and unfamiliar. So, of course, they're trying to sell people on the idea. So, and then it does have people who talk about like what it felt like, though.
It's interesting.
It's very painful. They're just trying to justify it, saying, well, it's not worse than tasers, or, you know, it's more advanced.
And I think there's a bunch of different versions, and like some of them are more extreme than others, and there's different companies producing different kinds. But yeah, I guess it has something to do with that like fray effect. Because there was a guy, his name was, I don't know, something Frey, but he was like he was funded by the Office of Naval Research in the U.S. Army. He was like their most active researcher on the bio effects of microwave radiation, I guess, in the country. And he wrote a paper in like the 60s, and he was pinpointing the brain's receptor site as the temporal lobes, which extend beneath the temples. And then like each lobe bears a small region with the auditory cortex or whatever. And that process that they like processes nerve signals from the outer and inner ears. So he was like studying all the mechanisms and how to like dial in. I guess they used his research to dial in their systems to like target the inner ear or something along those lines. But yeah, I don't know. It gets into like, it's like the field of like, I don't know, like psychophysical and psychotronics, like psychological warfare. And I don't know, there was an NSA agent that discussed some of the potentials of the technology, and he was speaking to the Soviets about the potential utilization of it. And he said, quote, designed to both a target's living corridors and microwaves, causing numerous physical effects, including a damaged nervous system. So I don't know. And there's like a bunch of interesting patents, but could go on and on about it for days.
Yeah, I have to look into stuff that says that it damages the nervous system, because that is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Government can get sued. A lot of money.
Even if they're using it as a non-lethal to potentially.
Yeah, if it causes damage to the nervous system, permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not allowed. So, because it's reasonable force. And that's the other thing that a lot of people are like discussing is it reasonable force? Because if you're using it to disperse a crowd and there's like pain involved, same consideration with pepper spray. You have to think, okay, well, is this too extreme? If it causes permanent damage, absolutely. I mean, that's why torture is not allowed. Torture is non-lethal, but it's not ethical. So,
right. And I think that's what damage with torture. That makes sense.
And that's what this stuff kind of falls into. But
well, let's leave it at that then and wrap it up. The direct energy weapons, and then we can elaborate further on it next time when Kyle gets us back on here. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Philosophical Minds podcast. If you've enjoyed any of the content that you've heard today, I'd like to support the show. You can do so over at paypal.me/philosophicalminds. That is paypal.me/philosophicalminds.